Welcome to meeting number 33 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021, the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today, we are going to receive a briefing with the 2014 Centennial Flame Research Award recipient. The committee grants the Centennial Flame Research Award to a Canadian with a disability to enable them to conduct research and prepare a report on the contributions of one or more persons with disabilities to the public life of Canada or the activities of Parliament. This award is presented in accordance with the Centennial Flame Research Award Act. And I'm very pleased to welcome Selma Kouidri, the 2014 award recipient, to begin our discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks, followed by a round of questions. For your benefit, Ms. Kouidri, I would like to make a few additional comments. I expect that you are probably already aware of these things. First, interpretation at the video conference is available. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. When you're speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And when you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And with that, welcome to the committee. You have the floor for 5 minutes. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. And I thank the honorable members of the committee here today for allowing me to participate. I'm going to make my presentation in French because that's my mother tongue. In fact, it's my second because my mother tongue is Arabic. But I can also speak English from time to time as well. So I thank you. And I apologize to the interpreters if I stray from the notes I provided for this presentation. So I thank the honorable members who've allowed me to be present virtually today to present to you the fruit of my endeavors made possible by the Centennial Flame Research Award, which I received in 2014. It was a great honor for me, and it was great recognition of my personal work and the work that I wished to accomplish for Ms. Maria Barile to present the exceptional career that she had. She herself was a disabled woman, an immigrant, who had really the profile of something that represented me in some ways as a woman who was disabled and also an immigrant. I arrived in Canada in 1996. So I would just like to talk a little bit about the report that was sent to you, my research project, which I achieved. At the outset, it was really to present the atypical career that Ms. Maria Barile had. She passed away in 2013. It was a really premature departure for us. We didn't have the opportunity to really learn about all of the work that she's done and the tremendous contributions she made to Canadian and to Quebec society, and the work she did for disabled women like myself. I met her in 2008, and my first meeting with her was when I was beginning my term as a worker at Disabled Women's Network Montreal, which she co-founded. And after having created DAWN Canada, the Disabled Women's Network Canada. So really she has been working on all of these movements since she arrived in Canada. She arrived here in 1964. She was born in Italy and came to Canada to join her father along with her mother and two brothers. So she came from this family. And at the age of 11 in Quebec, she saw very quickly the scope of the challenges that she would have to face. And also so that she would be able to integrate into the society here. She was a child who was hearing impaired and had a further disability which was diagnosed later on. So she's a person who showed tremendous perseverance since her arrival here at the age of 11. She worked very, very hard to continue her studies. She is self-taught. Perhaps you're aware of this. Disabled people could follow studies up to the age of 18 in specialized schools. At least this was in the 1980s. Or happily today it's not the same case, and we can go much further. But Maria came here in that context, where at the age of 18 she was told you can't go any further with your studies. And at that point she didn't even have a high school diploma. So she was just learning to speak English and French. Her mother tongue was Italian. So this is a person who worked very, very hard in order to be able to pursue her studies, finish her high school diploma, and she even studied at college, and all of this was through correspondence. So that really demonstrates her determination and perseverance. So my meeting with her really showed me what the possibilities were for a disabled woman here in Quebec and Canada, and even elsewhere. There were no limits for her. If she wanted to really do something, there were opportunities, and you had to seize them. And you have to realize as well that Maria Barillet worked very hard on breaking down barriers and facing glass ceilings. And I repeat that she, as a we as disabled women face glass ceilings everywhere we look. And so this work really allowed me to do this introspection and to really see and appreciate the intellectual work and the professional application of this woman, but also her involvement as a person and as a leader and as a model for disabled immigrant women and for all disabled women, but particularly for women and young girls. So for me, she really paved the way for all people who are disabled. She was one of the first in this movement in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and she worked on this very hard until her premature death. She worked against all discrimination and violence, especially towards women and girls, domestic violence as well. She worked so hard so that disabled women would not have to face this kind of situation, family violence and abuse. And so we have to remember that this is something that happens to all women. It's not just some. So the work that we must do collectively is something that we have to work on as a society. And it is collectively up to all of us to provide the support and resources to these women. And so the report that you received defines all of these implications, all of this work. And this woman was an agent of change for me. She achieved so many things that, and I said I met her in 2008, but I also started to work on the women's movement thanks to her. And I realized myself as a woman and as a citizen because of her, and in my society that welcomed me here in Quebec, thanks to her. And thanks to her, I realized there were no limits. As you may know, an immigrant, a woman arriving here, faces challenges right from the get-go. For any woman immigrant, it's a challenge, but when you're disabled, it's even a bigger one. So Maria Barillet really created a path forward for us and gave us the opportunity to find our place in this society. And just because I have a disability, I'm not going to sit on the sidelines. I have something to contribute to this society, and I can make changes as well. And I can also make sure that it benefits others and other women as well, particularly those persons with a disability. So I worked very hard to seek out testimony from her family, from friends and colleagues, people who she rubbed shoulders with. She did university studies. She was one of the first to go as far as she did at the university level. And she was a professional social worker who unfortunately never managed to work in her field because of the barriers that were there, the discrimination tied to this disability. So she would laugh and say, I have hours and hours of social work under my belt, but it comes from my kitchen. So lots of people would go visit Maria to be supported. And also with Dawn Montreal that she founded, it was all about inclusion and all about diversity, regardless of what the person's disability was, regardless of what their culture or sexual orientation was. It was a safe space for everyone. She was one of the first who created safe spaces for women in this regard so that they could realize their dreams. So all of this work I wanted to share with others, and I wanted people to know that the history of disabled persons has been written by many people, and especially women who have taken their place in these movements. But we have a tendency to forget the fruit of this social work, the wonderful results of this work done by all of these women. And so all of that testimony, as I said, her family members were so generous with me. They shared her work with me too. She wrote many articles. She did a lot of research on the needs of persons with disabilities, on adaptations that are required, and she was one of the first who fought really hard for universal accessibility, and today we're happy to see that there is an act on accessibility that has been enacted across the country. And it's pioneers like Maria Barillet who made it possible for this to happen. In Montreal, for example, public transit, metros are more and more accessible. Madame Couedry, we have a group of members of Parliament who are anxious to ask you questions. So if you could wrap up your remarks, please. You will have the opportunity to elaborate further in response to those questions. Okay, thank you. I have finished, really. It's just to say that all of the work that has been done, everything is in the report, and the testimony is there. It's a woman, as I said, who has worked in 3 languages, French, English, and Italian, and I'm ready to take your questions, and perhaps I might add a few details after that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Couedry. And now we will begin with questions with the Conservatives. Ms. Dancho, please. You have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Couedry, for your remarks. My first question is, I'm always interested in hearing these kinds of feminist stories. Could you tell us a bit more about her consulting firm that she founded, Eco Access? Yes, Eco Access, it was a business, a firm that she really wanted to create to achieve her own dreams. Just the mere fact of thinking of sustainable development and recycling and thinking about fighting against climate change, this wasn't accessible to all disabled people. That people could have a bin for recyclable items, but people weren't really included in this program. It was all geared towards people who had no disability. So she also fought to make sure that these containers were accessible to people with disabilities as well, that it'd be easy for people to get those products out of their house. But she also produced recycled materials, bags that she shared with people rather than using plastic bags. She would encourage people to use reusable ones made by her office. And she also did a great deal of consultation with businesses to better adapt everything that they were offering in general, and she even did consultations with the city of Montreal so that the recycling service be better designed and accessible to them, and it should be universal. So she was one of the first to really promote accessibility and to talk a great deal about recycle. There were discussion groups that she organized, and she ensured that these women with disabilities were part of the discussion so that they would be able to benefit from this. And she participated in everything that was concerning sustainable development and climate change. But the business has ceased to exist. That is what is unfortunate. But I could talk to you a bit about that later. We are trying to pick up where she left off. I lived in Montreal for a number of years, and I know that the recycling program is excellent. I didn't know that Ms. Barrier had contributed so much to that. That's very interesting. Thank you. Second question. Could you share with the committee her sustainable development programs under Dawn Montreal? Well, in fact, Dawn Montreal is an association that she co-founded in 1985, and it really was following her involvement in the creation of Dawn Canada, which is the pan-Canadian national organization. All women who were present at the creation of Dawn went on to their respective provinces to create, as she called it, small dawns, because in the group of disabled women, disabled groups rather, there was nothing for disabled women. So they said they were fighting for women's rights, and then we'll see later on about the specificity of certain groups. So disabled women in the end. So she said, well, if there's no environment for us, we'll create it ourselves. And we are also going to work on this. This was the idea with Dawn, and it has lasted, it still exists rather, it has since '86, and she's worked on the challenges that concern women, but also disabled persons. We're talking about the health and welfare of women, of education in terms of sexuality, reproductive rights, and she worked on all of this as well as abuse of women and girls, whether it was institutional, whether it's domestic, or family violence, and sexual assaults as well. So this is a legacy that I really benefited from personally, and I continue her work. All of the work that has been done by Action des Femmes to promote the specificity of problems for disabled women and promoting support for these women. She was also one of the first to intervene with the Quebec government to talk about action plans to be included in action plans to fight violence against women. So in 1995, it's the first time that the province talked about that, and it's thanks to Maria Barillet's work, because she did all this work for women as victims, and she proposed solutions. Now, unfortunately, the work continues. It has to be done. It's not simple, and I'm happy to say today that all of this legacy, everything that she left behind, I think we have benefited from, and with her family, we created a new entity to continue her work, a National Institute for Equality, Equity, and Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities. And so we're carrying on her vision. We want to have equality amongst all women and all, and that the inclusion for her was the most important thing. So without any judgments, it's huge what she did for women, for disabled women, but especially for Quebec society. And I think that no one can say that they don't know about her. And she did so much. She worked so hard so that education be accessible to all people, accessible for young women, boys as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Ms. Coudray for your report on this amazing woman, Marie Berele, who, as you mentioned, died, I guess it was in 2013, and that it's so unfortunate because her life was not without many struggles, and you talk about this in your report, and I thought it would be good for this committee to hear that, especially how difficult it was when she first came to Canada, and maybe you can talk about the terrible attack that she suffered when she was quite young, and how this impacted her life.
Yes, as I was saying, Maria had a lot of challenges and encountered a lot of discrimination, but I can talk about the severe incident that channeled all her work since she arrived in Quebec and Canada. I would say since age 11. She was in a specialized school, the McKay School for the deaf and hard of hearing. She was already subjected to discrimination, as she said herself. She was told you can't go any further in your studies. She wanted to, but she was told no. She was told you can't learn more than you've learned. So she experienced a lot of discrimination, but she was a woman who used public transit a lot. She was hard of hearing, but nobody knew she was hard of hearing. So she tried to hide this because of fear, but she also faced challenges with her health. She had spasms, neurological problems that happened, so one could see that she had a disability. And she had an attack in the metro. This was in her personal notebook that I had access to. She shared that with me. She talked about this attack and how she felt so vulnerable because of the people who accosted her in the metro in a dark place. What she was worried about is that she had work to give back in school. She wasn't even thinking about her health or safety, but she was wondering how she could give in her homework, and she was being attacked. She lost her purse. That was what worried her. And when she asked for help, nobody in the metro supported her or helped her. When it happened, she's the one who ended up going to the police. The problem is there was no adaptation, no accommodation. She had speech difficulties because of her disability. Often she wasn't believed. Whatever she said was not believed. When she talked about her attack, it's as if they diminished this because they thought she was inventing this, but this was reality. This was what she'd experienced. But she said, I felt alone. Nobody was there to support me. We had to work hard for the police to believe this complaint and go a little further with it, but nothing was done. But what she reported most often was, as a complainant, one can end up alone where you're not believed, where you're experiencing trauma, but nobody is there to support you. At the police station, there was nobody. It was not adapted to support a person who was traumatized with a disability. She didn't understand what was going on around her. No support, no accommodation from the police, only members of her family. But this is trauma that she lived with throughout her life, and that is why she did the work she did, was to support all the survivors of violence of any kind. That was what was most important, is to somebody next to you to support you, to support us in our complaints and as things move along, and to fight against violence.
So much. You say in your report that she felt invisible, and I can really feel that from reading your words. And I wondered what she would think today. If she were here today and she could talk to our committee, what would she say? I mean, things have changed in many cases for the better, but people with disabilities, and especially women with disabilities, are still really have roadblocks. But the Accessible Canada Act is moving us in the right direction. Do you think that she would say we are moving in the right direction?
I'm absolutely sure that she'd say that there's a great deal of improvement. She would have been happy to see what happened. I wrote something 2 years ago, and I said, what could I tell you, Maria Barile, of what's going on today? There are things that have changed, very positive changes. We're happy to see there's been consultation about legislation, but there are some points that were taken into account, and we're working on that. There is some open-mindedness, though. If you look at violence against women with disabilities, this is still not a priority. Just the support services for victims of violence, for instance, we're not there in that legislation. The legislation hasn't really, how could I put it, at the provincial level, it has greater weight. When she goes into a provincial jurisdiction, it loses some strength. It's better at the federal level, but it's something huge for us. It's very important. She would be happy with all the changes that are being accomplished now, but there's a lot left to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madame Chabot.
Ms. Chabot, for 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a privilege to have this time in committee to welcome you, Ms. Guidry, and to thank you. Thank you for this work that helped us discover a great woman, I should say, a woman who had to fight despite her disabilities. Because we know that when you're a woman, women with disabilities are subject to double discrimination in our society. And I think that in your report, you illustrate some of the challenges and the obstacles she met and the fights that she wanted to lead to change things. So I thank you very much for sharing that with us and for having taken all that time to help us get to know her. She left us too soon. I had more or less the same question as Ms. Young. If she was here today, what would she say? I think that in the association that you lead, you're continuing her fight. I think she inspired a lot of militant women. You talked about equality in fact. You are right to talk about that, but let me put this to you. In terms of equality of rights, I think there was a lot of progress, but when it comes to equality in fact, a lot is left to do, I'd say. So on that question, what are your prospects? What do you think she has left us, and what could we work on? Well, I would say that her approach that she always put forward was, it was always in a feminist framework, an intersectional approach. That was very important to her, and understand people in their entirety. It's up to the person. We have to understand the habits and needs of that person. It's not up to us to decide for them what is best. Equality, in fact, is something she worked on. This is a woman who even back then cooperated with all kinds of people, who represented all kinds of organizations that called on her, be it disabled people, women's organizations. And she went, even though she may not always have seen why she was there. Why did she go? Because she wanted to sensitize them to this fact. At the Fédération des Femmes du Québec, she said, where are the disabled women in here? How can you work on this? Especially when she started work for the World March of women, Bread and Roses. She was one of the people who worked hard for this march to be accessible. And she was told, well, you know, we will fight for the rights of women and then we'll see. So we're always at the back end. And she said, no, that's not correct. We should work together. I will continue the work with you, but I want disabled women to be included in your work so that all the demands be also put forward by women with disabilities. You cannot speak on behalf of these women, of some women, and forget others. We are a diverse group, and that's important. I think that approach is something that I adhere to a great deal, and she made these groups, these disabled groups, also understand that parity was never very strong in those groups, even today. But we're working very hard. She worked very hard to integrate those kinds of decision-making groups. Let's talk about equality. What do you think about that? What's going on? There are files that are very important, like violence against women. Together, we could see some progress. Women alone should not bear the burden of that. So she created that link with a lot of groups. And I think that tired her out. It wasn't easy to be heard by those groups. To be heard, you know, she's one of the first who denounced this when we had questions about policies, when they were saying, okay, we're doing something for the disabled. She said, no, if you're doing it without us being equal, where are women in your report? And even now we see in the reports of the Office of the Disabled, they called upon, they put gender-based analysis, but nothing more. Women aren't all just one woman. There are groups of women. They are diverse. It's important to know who you're dealing with, and that's the work she did, and we continue that. I personally and many others, I work with the collaborators who were with Maria at the time, who didn't always agree with her approach, but today they are involved. Dr. Patrick Mujerelas, an anthropologist who's well known in disabled circles, especially for the Human Development Index. Now he works very hard to make sure that equality in fact happens, even in research, to advance all persons with disabilities. So I think that today Maria would be proud of the work we're doing, would be proud of being present and talking with you today. She would have been very honored to see me here and to present all the work she did and present the women for whom she was a model and her partisans who continue her work. Thank you, Ms. Chabot.
Please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I just want to start out by congratulating you on your research and also being awarded the scholarship to research to begin with. You spoke a lot, certainly about the intersectionalities and the impacts of not just being disabled, but being a woman, being a woman who immigrated to Canada and the impacts that had in terms of making things a lot more difficult. And I've often spoke about intersectionalities and how it impacts people's lives. We know that, for example, 70% of individuals that are disabled live in poverty, for example. I've brought that up many times. The fact that that's even higher when you start researching rates of poverty amongst the BIPOC communities. I'm wondering if you could speak to that, and certainly in your research of your mentor, if you could make a couple of comments about that.
Merci.
Thank you. You spoke to a rate that's very, very high, and in every province across Canada, there is a very high rate of poverty amongst people with disabilities, and the labor market is always limited for these people, particularly for women. It's always recognized that women have the highest unemployment rate, or rather lack of access to the labor market, and have the lowest income for women who have disabilities. So whether it's in Quebec or elsewhere in the country. So it's very alarming. That was the case during Maria Barillet's life, and it's still the case today, unfortunately. Things have not changed. And the pandemic really emphasized this. The people who were really left behind are people with disabilities, especially women who found themselves obliged to become caregivers. And Maria Barilla, was a caregiver. She took care of her mother her whole life, and that was never recognized. A lot of these women are single mothers. They're heads of families, and they don't even have access to an equal access, and don't have equal access rather to the labor market. So these inequities have been emphasized even more by the pandemic and in crisis situations such as we have been experiencing since 2020. So the labor market is very closed. A lot of discrimination is based on disabilities. It's based on sex and ethnocultural origin as well. So we can't ignore that either. So we have all of this discrimination that is intersected, and it's more difficult to live a dignified life for a person with disabilities, again, especially for women. So that continues today, and I can tell you that women are paid the least and are the poorest in Canadian society, and especially in Quebec society. So we have a lot of difficulties. Often disabled women are highly educated amongst the whole community of people with disabilities, but none will say probably that she's working in the field that she has accomplished her studies in. So they will accept work just to pay the bills. But they have to turn to being entrepreneurs, even if that scares them a great deal. Why? Because they don't have access regularly to the labor market, so they have to create job opportunities for themselves, and assistance is not often available to them. I myself have had to work independently to meet my needs, and as a mother, and therefore poverty hasn't changed for women. The rates are very high and higher for the population in general. So there's work that needs to be done. There's work that needs to be done, and I think the new legislation will help. It doesn't really work directly on this, but we wanted to have quotas at one point in time that would be respected. But businesses and companies really need to hire these people. They have contributions to make, and people are fearful of them.
Failed in upholding these minimum human rights. What are your thoughts on that?
Réponse très brève, s'il vous plaît.
A very brief answer, please. Well, we use that tool of the International Convention quite often, yes, but Canada has been called upon in 2016 and 17 by the International Committee of the United Nations, so that there's more work done for women and girls in this situation. And there will be consultations for an alternative report soon, which will be tabled and will let us know where we're at, because we talked about an intersectional approach, and that is so important to be able to support women and girls in this situation, particularly those who are victims. And nothing's been done really yet. So all of the assistance programs that exist don't go directly to people on the front lines, and that's what concerns us the most. We'd like to know what tangible projects are being planned so that we can support these people. So we're working a lot with that convention. Thank you.
Much congratulations.
Next, Mr. Tucker, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Selena, for the work that you've done and to share the wonderful story that is Maria. I'm inspired, and I'm sure others, and especially people that are people of disabilities or facing challenges that Maria faced. It's an inspiring story, and I thank you for sharing that. And it's a little bit belated, but congratulations on receiving the scholarship. As I read the report that was forwarded to us, I attempted to do some additional research on her, and I couldn't find additional information, unfortunately, on Google or either Googling the name of the report or her name. There's limited information out there, and I just wanted to raise that with you to hear if you have any plans or if you've tried other ways of hopefully sharing the story more broadly.
Yes, I agree with you entirely. And what I wanted to clarify as well is that all of the research, all of the work that she did, often is found on university search engines where access is very limited. And often you have to pay for the articles, and so it's not accessible to the population in general, and I find that most unfortunate. What we did is I attempted in my work with the CEDAF, for example, which is the education center, I tried to get a hold of the whole bibliography on Marina Barillet so it would be available. So some of her work is available, not all. It's very difficult, and it also requires funding to have all that access. But what we did is that we created a physical library, not a virtual one, on Maria Barillet with Dawn Montreal. And afterwards, I will be launching this later. I haven't done it yet. I haven't made it public, but I was waiting to do it until this fall because Maria was named one of the 100 women who contributed the most to the advancement of women in Canada. And so she has been nominated amongst the 100 first Canadian women. And we're going to launch that report, and we'll also be launching it on the website that will talk about the work that she did. But also with Dawson College, you will see if you go onto their website that some of her work is available. But it's very restrictive. It's not fully public, and I find that most unfortunate. This is a woman who should be known, and that's what we want to do. We want to pursue this work so that she will be better known, because I share and distribute within groups of disabled people the work that she's done, and I want to share this information with these groups. But sometimes it seems as though the work, or the information rather, isn't spread around. I'm not prepared to stop fighting. I want to go further. And when we talk about the National Institute for Equity, we say that this is a structure that was set up thanks to Maria Barillet, and we represent her work and everything that we do. But I agree with you, that's what's really unfortunate. I think with this report and everything that I was able to compile in terms of work that will be available on different websites, with our new institute, and perhaps again with Dawson College, another institution, will make her work more accessible so that we could know her better.
Absolutely. And in the report, I was riveted by the stories and the successes that she's had. There's the one comment that you did make, that you were careful not to veer into a biography, but it sounds like there would be enough information that you've been working and collecting. Do you think that would be something that on the horizon of official biography that you would be able to write and hopefully have support in publishing and getting that story out to the masses?
Réponse brève, s'il vous plaît.
Brief answer, please. Well, absolutely. I thought it was a bit misleading, perhaps, to say that I wanted to write a biography, but her family did give me permission to do that, and I give my profound thanks to her family, especially her brother Bernardo. So yes, indeed, it's a dream of mine to complete this work and write this biography, because I want her to be known broadly. And I can tell you that she's known perhaps better internationally than she is in Canada, because she did a lot of work in the United States and even in England, where she was awarded a posthumous master's degree. But unfortunately, here in Canada, we don't talk enough about her. And even in Quebec, we don't talk enough about her. So I think that's something I should do, and that I will do, in fact. Thank you.
And for sharing her story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Next, Mr. Long, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues. And Ms. Quidry, thank you very much for your wonderful report and your presentation. I've been lucky enough to be a member of HUMA since 2015, and certainly we've had lots of, very, very worthy recipients with respect to the Centennial Flame Award. And I think my first question to you is, with respect to the Centennial Flame Award, what can we do as a committee to better improve that award and make it more meaningful to researchers like you?
Well, I could say, first of all, that when I was honored to receive this award, I had no information on it, and so I found out about it and decided to apply. But I think there should be more information about how to apply, and also how to support people who are awarded this and who really aren't used to doing research. I think it would be important to support people with documentation, let them know what is expected of them with this report, and also better publicize their work. So for myself, when I wanted to see what work had been done by my predecessors, I had a great deal of difficulty finding that. So it was difficult for me to even see what had been done in the past. So I think to better publicize this work and make it more public on various platforms, it would be even more important. It's a sharing of knowledge, because this is expertise that we're putting forward, and it's important for HUMA as well to be able to have this showcase for this person, because for me it was a great honor, and it was so marvelous to have this platform. So for people with disabilities, it's so wonderful to say, go ahead and show us what you have, and we'll publicize your work. I don't think we could ask for more. So having a more visible platform, a higher profile, if you will, and to share with everyone, that would be even better. I was very proud to have won this award, and I'm sure the other recipients are as well. So if I have anything to say, it would be that.
Absolutely, and Chair and colleagues, take note that certainly I think it is something that we can improve, is to actually promote and publicize the Centennial Flame Award for applicants and winners. I think that's something we can all endeavor to do better. Ms. Barilla, I want to, Ms. Quidry, my apologies. I want to just talk to you first about barriers to employment. And I know you touched on that. Did you do any work at all or any research with a Mark Wafer at Tim Hortons or a Randy Lewis at Walgreens? Do those names, did you cross paths with them or at all in your research?
No, I did not do any research about them, unfortunately. Maybe that's something we should look at. I didn't look at it personally.
Just for the committee's information and your information, Mark Wafer is an owner of Tim Hortons. He has hearing impairment, and Randy Lewis is a vice president of Walgreens in the States, and they both did amazing work hiring people with disabilities in their businesses, and obviously with great success. And I guess my question to you, Ms. Quidry, is What can we do as parliamentarians to help break down barriers to employment for persons with disability? What did you find out in your research, and do you have any suggestions for us as a committee to what we can do to help break down those barriers?
Rapidement, si possible.
Quickly, if possible. Well, I could say that many things are done, but it remains at the policy level. There should be more concrete gestures. You talked about examples that you gave of people who opened up their own business and encouraged the employability of people with disabilities. Maria was one of the people who went to companies and say, well, look, when you have a job offer, it would be a good idea to mention at the bottom of the page that that position is open to persons with disabilities, to women, to whatever. So that can make all the difference. Personally, when I look at job offers, if I don't see that sentence, I don't even apply because I think they won't take me, quite simply, because I have a visual limitation. There'll be a lot of questions. Employers are afraid. So perhaps promote the work of people with disabilities and say, look, take models. There are leaders in business. There are leaders in organizations, nonprofits, non-government organizations. These are nurseries, if you will, of skills for people with disabilities. They don't get much funding. Why not encourage them? These are people who work for disabled persons. They participate in society. They're taxpayers, so why not support them effectively and promote that work? There are skills there, and companies won't be scared any longer. These private sector companies won't be afraid of this. They'll see that in organizations you can manage this. So why not in the private sector? So maybe invite us sometimes.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Suite Madame Chabot pour 2 minutes et demie.
Ms. Chabot for 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you. I'll take this opportunity to salute you and congratulate you for this award and for your work. I may have a suggestion to make what we do here more visible. We could discuss this as a committee, or at least have a press release or something to make this widely known, to make sure that people know about the award and HUMA committee's involvement. When it comes to the letter of mandate of the Minister of Human Resources, she does have an action plan for the inclusion of persons with disabilities. What would your message to her be so that this could become concrete and be by and for women with disabilities? Well, as I say, the mandate is clear. The problem is they always go to the same organizations that have worked with the government in the past, have always been there, but change has not been that concrete. Maybe we have to change battle horses and see how we could help these people in the field. How could that non-reimbursable credit for the disabled be used? Maybe that's sufficient help. Not everybody has access to that credit. If you're not a worker, for instance, so maybe that could be something to help hiring or to help disabled persons start a business, support them in the labor market. I think it'd be a good idea to look at that, look at working with private sector companies. I agree with these quotas because it does allow us to offer jobs, but we should also allow for the evolution of these individuals. We see this with the Royal Bank. They hire a lot of persons with disabilities, but they always stay in the same job all their lives. They can't go any higher. Why? These are people who've studied, who have skills and education and knowledge and want to offer what they know, but we saw it with the pandemic. They had to adapt. telework for persons with disabilities is something they've asked for decades, and that allows them to be in the labor market, but employers have always been reluctant. Now we see that it works very well, and yet it's not disabled people who asked for this help when telework had to be installed for people across Canada. They have more expertise in this area because they've been working that way for decades. If I was to talk to the minister, I'd have a lot to say to her, many suggestions to make. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Chabot. Ms. Gazan.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just wanted to build on my last question around the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I agree with you. Since the pandemic, we have certainly seen, and we knew all along, in fact, how the disabled communities' human rights are not upheld in this country. And certainly the support for disabled persons during the pandemic was, for my opinion, much less than adequate. What changes do you feel could be put in place that would make a difference right now to improve the quality of life for disabled persons, to ensure that all disabled persons could live with human rights and dignity?
I think I know the population of people with disabilities. There's a tendency not to know them very well. At StatsCan, they don't look at this very clearly. We don't really always know who these people are. How do you establish that population to be able to support it? It starts from there. Programs are adapted to the numbers we have according to population statistics. But the pandemic showed that support for people with disabilities was absent, practically absent. They were thought about for financial support in the last instance. Their groceries had increased a great deal. These people often end up on social assistance. I'm talking about Quebec, but I'm sure it's true elsewhere. There's a hierarchy of poverty. Poverty for the whole population, when you look at it, and when you know your membership, when we know our population groups, is very different. We had called upon the federal government and even the Quebec government to take into account the people with disabilities. The UN and the organization, the WHO, had pointed this out. We had to support people, and people with disabilities had to be included. You don't think about that in the last instance. Think of the population and adapt this to certain groups. Let's think in a global way. We are inclusive. Our programs have to reflect everyone. So that financial assistance is very important, even in the budget that we saw recently. There is assistance coming, but it's not enough for people with disabilities. Not everybody has access to that disability tax credit. And we don't even know sometimes how to get it. So that's important to discuss. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Doncho, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just incredible information that you've shared, and I just want to add my thoughts with the rest of committee members that it's just incredible that, when I lived in Montreal, I had never heard of Marie Barele. So I'm just was thrilled to read your report and to hear so much about her. And I just thought you did an excellent job. And I really appreciated the specific quotes that you chose from her stories. You really built a narrative of what kind of woman she was. So I just want to congratulate you on that as well. And I was interested to learn in your report that she had attended McGill University, and I believe she was one of the first in her family to do so as well. And I just kind of had a sort of a bonding moment when I read that, because I was was also the first person in my family to attend university. I also went to McGill, and I believe you mentioned in your report that she sort of didn't see many people like her. She didn't really see any acceptance, and she faced quite a bit of what she felt was discrimination at McGill. And I just want you to perhaps, if you can give us more detail on what she experienced, and also it seemed to be in your report that you alluded to that was sort of the spark that started her activism. So if you can just tell us a little bit more about that. And I do it for anyone else who attended McGill. Is a great school, and they've made a lot of progressive moves forward. But I was glad to see that they've come a long way, but also disappointed that she had that experience. So anyway, I'll just let you take it away, and if you could share with us more of her experience, that'd be great.
Thank you. What she reported was little pieces of conversation, but I found things out with members of her family and reading certain things she wrote. I read about her experience at McGill in social work especially. This is a woman who really wanted to be close to people, who wanted to support people emotionally. And social work for her was systematic. She couldn't do anything else. The problem is when she tried to study feminist studies and looked at that, there was also the feminist movement at the time, which was very important, but she never saw statistics about women with disabilities. She never saw a disabled or immigrant woman in these groups. She tried to find statistics. They were always statistics from the United States and not Canada. And she said, well, where are we in this? It's normal because we're invisible in this society. We're so invisible. And that's what really bothered her. And with her professor at university, she was able to discuss this in depth. And she said, I'd like to talk about the reality of women with disabilities. I'd like to shed light on this, but I don't have the statistics. And her professor said, well, why don't you do this? Go ahead, do it. But she encountered difficulties. Her entire work was based on statistics from the United States, which are not even Canadian. She could not base herself exclusively on her reality as a person. It was very difficult. So when she looked at these people with disabilities here in Canada, it was very monolithic. There was no analysis, no differentiation by sex, for instance. So everything she got from abroad, from the United States mainly. And she was much more in contact with U.S. organizations that supported people with disabilities. So that's the work that allowed her to say, well, this will be the cornerstone of what I want to work on. My concern is women with disabilities and why they're invisible, be it in women's groups as such, because even women's groups excluded diverse women, be they immigrants or disabled. They were excluded. And even in the within the disabled groups, that was the work she did at McGill. That was her first study. She talked about this group in the population, that is women with disabilities. She started with that, and since that time, that was her work. She wanted to determine what challenges these women encountered, poverty, violence, that really bothered her, as well as exclusion.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I think I have just a few seconds left, or?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You have
Was
a
one
closing
time
comment? Go ahead.
Okay.
You probably
Well,
don't have time for a question and answer.
Oh, okay. Thank you again, Selma, for your incredible work, and please keep sharing incredible stories like Maria's with the world. I think it's a great addition to the Canadian landscape that you've made. And again, thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ms. Nacho. Et puis le dernier parlementaire.
The last parliamentarian to get a question will be Mr. Hong.
Very
5
much,
minutes, go ahead.
Chair, for your kind introduction. And to Salma, if I may, congratulations on your great work. Went through the report. It's quite fascinating. And I agree with my colleague, MP Lon, and other colleagues that we should do more to promote your work and make it known to more people so we get more support on battling some of a lot of the issues that are raised by your report. But I heard you talking about stats, and today is the deadline to return census. And I seen your report, Ms. Bagley spoke about the long form census and how important it is to obtain a quote, a realistic profile of a part of the population that is often invisible. And speaking as a former census commissioner, I can tell you how much I appreciate the amount of work StatsCan staff and census staff putting to ensure the integrity of these data, and how important these data are to help us to shape policy going forward. So can you talk a little bit about what she meant by that and expand on the importance of census?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer that, because yes, that was really a great combat, and Maria Barillet was so disappointed when the census was so shortened. We weren't so much aware of it, but the more time goes by, the more we see the importance of the census and those statistics. Yes, we say that we don't just want to be a statistic, but those statistics are important to model plans and policies. As you say, she worked very hard. She also wrote articles on this subject to fight against the new version of the census, which was very short. And I recall when I received it that I was so disappointed because there was no place for me to put down information that seemed to me to be so important and that represented me. So that I lost the opportunity to be able to say to members of government that we exist. So we need to say to people that having such a short census and such an expedited version is to exclude vulnerable groups. It's important to make those groups more visible. And so it's important, yes, to have the longer version. It's work, but even within our organization, we work a great deal with statistics, and we count a great deal on what Statistics Canada produces. And even within the province of Quebec, we see the importance of working closely with the most marginalized and vulnerable groups. Statistics count for decision makers, and for us, it's a battle that we haven't stopped working on. So we need to have those statistics to talk about our reality. Thank you.
From your response, I can tell that you perhaps received a short form of the census, but for many Canadians, the lucky ones, that actually gets the long form. And I was same with you, and happy to see the return of the long forms. And I also read the report, and there was a quote, and I couldn't agree more. That's why I took a screenshot. It goes as, if you look at a disabled person and only see their disability, you're not looking at them the right way. And that was the quote by Maria. And I couldn't agree with it more, because it's so true. If you want to expand to whether is a gender based, whether it's race based, whether it's religious based, whether it's a newcomer, all these based of discrimination, that's the essence of discrimination. It's so counterproductive to the society, what they can bring to the table. Can you speak a little bit about that? And I hear your previous answers about opening up the job opportunities, but how as a society, to see beyond the disability, to see their true talent and their true contribution to an organization or societal community or business? How do we ensure that takes place in our public policy?
Look, awareness is so important. What you're doing today with this award, for me as a recipient of it, just publicizing the work and talking about how these people have great contributions to make to society is part of the whole promotion and social participation and economic inclusion as well. I often say that I represent intersectionality. I am a woman. I'm an immigrant. I have visual disabilities, and sometimes I go out without my white cane, but when I go out with the cane, people don't look at me the same way. It's they just see that cane. It's not Selma, me, the person that they know. So I want people to be aware. The white cane is just a part of me. I am much, much more than that. I'm a woman. I'm a full person, and I have much to contribute, and a lot that I can learn from you too. So let's try and work on awareness. We do this daily in our work. We do this through workshops. We invite people, and I don't know if it's possible for you, but you might be able to meet with such people. Perhaps you have employees who people who are suffering from some disabilities. It allows for people to see different models, if you will, and we have to go beyond that initial perception and see the person for who they are. And it's just people in the population in general as well. They're not necessarily people who've done extraordinary things in their lives, but I'm sorry, I talk a lot, don't I?
Mais ça, c'était la dernière
you.
question.
Well, that was the last question. So your passion is obvious to us, that's clear, and we greatly appreciate that. We appreciate your work and really your expertise. It's clear that you have a future that will be impressive, absolutely. So thank you very much for your work. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your passion, the passion that you are demonstrating through your work. It's greatly appreciated, and it will also help parliamentarians in their work. As you know, the award is something that's given out annually, so having someone like you present to us was a great experience and something that will be helpful to us in choosing the next candidate. So thank you very much. We will continue our meeting with committee business. So you're welcome to stay if you wish. But if you wish, you also may leave at this point. So once again, congratulations, and thank you very much. Thank you very much for this honor that you have granted me. I repeat once again, it truly is an honor for me. And in the fall, we'll be continuing the work, and we'll send you all of the information on the report. So I'm available if you need me to show some more passion. I'd be pleased to return. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you to you.
Committee will now proceed to consideration of matters related to committee business. I just want to remind you that we are in public and not in camera. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for submitting your prioritized list of witnesses for the senior study. They have been received, and the clerk is working on inviting our first panel for tomorrow. I do believe you have been sent, and you should have before you a budget for the senior study. It has been circulated, and I would now like to entertain a motion for its approval. The budget is for $4,300, primarily for headsets and phone lines for witnesses. We have a motion for approval of the budget for the senior study. Okay. Would anyone care to move it? I can't move it. Hands up.
Je peux être motionnaire.
I could move it, the motion, yes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Ms. Chabot.
Discussion?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to propose, not that I'm opposed to the budget, but you know, I know that in terms of expert witnesses, our team proposed having elders come, Indigenous elders, and I was wondering if we could add onto the budget tobacco and a small honorarium, as this is customary in our communities, if everybody's comfortable with that.
So first of all, I do think it would be in order to allow for that. The only question I would have, and I'm going to direct it to the clerk, is whether we believe that $4,300 would be sufficient to allow for that, or whether we should actually increase it a little bit to allow for that. Madam Clerk, would you like to comment on that? I just want to know if there's enough flex to allow for it, that's all.
I will actually direct the question. I will ask the logistics officer who did help.
Oh.
And I will ask that question, and I can come back to the committee with an answer on that to be more confirmed, to be direct on that.
Well, I think to err on the side of caution, Ms. Gazan, I think it would be in order to say 4,500, and I presume that would cover it. You okay with that?
Yeah, so tobacco and just a small honorarium.
Well, I'm not sure.
I don't know what the list of witnesses are yet, and so it's hard for me to say that. But
okay,
Mr. Chair, I can come back to the committee and I can resubmit a new budget once I speak to the logistics officer about this subject.
Whether an honoraria is something that we are able to do. So I take your guidance on it. Let's table the budget for now, and our clerk will get back to us on it. So we'll consider it at our next meeting. They are fair questions, and they deserve to be answered before we vote on it. All right. Second item.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I have a question about the budget.
Sorry, Ms. Doncho, go ahead. Yep.
Regarding the working meals, it says $250. Just a small question about, I don't know MPs, I don't believe any MPs are there. So is that just for the staff, or just wondering who that food's for?
That question. My expectation is that anyone shows to a meeting person and there is a meal served, but I will also defer that to the clerk to see if I guessed correctly.
We have added in one working meal, but if it's not utilized, if there's no members, it will not be used. The money will not be used, but it is included in the budget just in case.
Yeah, I think the idea here is to try to plan for every exigency, and so that we don't have to come back to the committee for further approval. Okay, I trust that answers your question, Ms. Doncho. Madame Chabot, s'il vous plaît.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question on the budget. With what you've added to be just err on the side of caution, I think 4,500 is fine. It's minimal budget when when we are all present in person, the budgets are very different. So I have a question, because with the witnesses we invited a coalition of seniors that includes 6 different organizations, and I think that if they are on the list, they would like to be 3. So is that additional money for 3 headsets, and if so, is that, what is the cost? Will that fit into the budget as it's drafted now? So I just want to make sure that they won't be turned away because of a lack of budget. I think there's enough of a margin, but Madam Clerk, do you have any comments? Well, normally it's 2 witnesses per organization, but when there is a third, it's just a decision of the chair to determine the cost. So in a virtual situation, it's really just up to the chair to say that they will be able to have 3 headsets for that group of witnesses.
Well, okay, we will come back
Monsieur
to...
Président,
oui.
Mr. Chairman? Can we settle that question? Because I also have a question regarding our agenda. So will we deal with that later, or what do you want to do? Well,
Okay, I have two other things to raise, and you have something too? Go ahead. Not about the budget, though. It's something else about the agenda, and I'd like you to indicate during this meeting what the intention is. We heard that in our break week, there were 24 hours of work reserved next week for the HUMA committee. So I'd like you to tell us the intent here for next week. What's the objective here? What's the objective of that? Yes, yes, I'd be pleased to do that.
Implementation Act is before the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee have had discussions around referring sections of the Budget Implementation Act to this committee with a return date of May 21st. As a precaution, I have asked for time to be reserved for committee meetings during the break week. I have not yet brought this to the committee, and I am not bringing it to the committee now because the referral from the Finance Committee has not yet happened. So if the sections of the Budget Implementation Act are referred to us, it will be up to the committee to decide whether they want to study the Budget Implementation Act and report it back to the Finance Committee within the deadline that they have prescribed. So, la réponse, Madame Chabot, est oui.
So the answer to Ms. Chabot is yes. We have set aside enough time for that requirement, but we do not have to make a decision now because there has not been a reference by the Finance Committee. It's anticipated, but it hasn't arrived yet.
If we can move then to the news release that has been provided to you and prepared by the Library of Parliament analysts. This is a news release announcing that we are going ahead with the senior study and proposing that written briefs be no longer than 5 pages or approximately 2,000 words to be submitted electronically before June the 7th. Is there any discussion or any comments with respect to the news release? And if there aren't, I would be happy to entertain a motion that we give it the go-ahead and I guess post it on the website. Any discussion on the news release? Do we have consensus to publish the news release as drafted? I see consensus. Thank you, colleagues. And finally, back to the Centennial Flame. If agreeable, we can adopt a motion for the drafting and publication of a news release inviting persons with a disability to submit an application for consideration of the 2021 Centennial Flame Research Award. So if it's the will of the committee, we could issue a press release calling for applications. The motion would read, if you're so inclined, as follows: that the amount for the 2021 Centennial Flame Research Award be set at $5,500, and that the deadline for submitting an application be set at a date that you would determine, and that a news release be published on the committee website. Is there any discussion on the advisability of such a news release? Are we comfortable to go ahead and call for applications for this year's award? Very well then. In terms of an end date, is a month reasonable? So the 11th, today's the 11th, June the 11th. All right.
Oh, sorry, Chair, just to
Ms.
clarify.
Dancho, go ahead. Yep.
Sort of the deadline for applicants to submit would be a month from today?
I'm throwing that out there. I'm open to more informed suggestions for sure.
I think maybe a couple more weeks, maybe 6 weeks would be good. By the time we share with our constituents and for someone to write the application, it just takes a little time. So I may suggest just a couple more weeks, but just thinking back on how much work it took to fill out scholarship applications, I want to give people just a little bit more time.
Sure. I guess my only concern is if the committee is going to consider them, would we be able to get it in before we rise? And if not, if it's too tight all the way around, then we look at it as a project for after the summer. But I do take your point that there would be a fair bit of work involved in it. Ms. Young, please.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Dancho. I think we need to give people more time. So I would think 6 weeks would be probably what people would require, but I understand your concerns there. So, but looking at the calendar, I think that could maybe be our last order of business.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Turnbull.
I was going to say almost identical to what Ms. Young said. So I also agree with Ms. Dancho that we probably need a little more time, but I understand your concerns as well. Thanks.
I detect the consensus forming. Madame Chabot.
Yes, I could have put my hand down. I think that time is more important than the timetable of our work, so I think we should give people more time.
Just a question. Oh, sorry, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
I should have had my hand up. I have a question. How long is the application? Is it a long? I'm just wondering because I know there's a lot of students I know that could probably use some research funds right now with the lack of jobs. So it'd be nice. It could be a summer project for a student. I'm just hoping we can get it out before summer. What's involved in the application process? Is it a long application?
I defer to the clerk or possibly Mr. Long, who has
I
some
have a
experience
quick
with this.
response
Madam
on
Clerk?
that question.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
So they must submit a letter of presentation to describe who they are, their disability, and their work experience. They also must submit a letter of support for the application from a person of your choice in terms of the research, and proof of Canadian citizenship, and that is all submitted to the committee.
Okay.
So just to clarify, so they have to submit a letter about indicating who they want to research. It sounds like a CV.
Yep.
Is that right? So a CV, a letter of intent of who they'd like to research, and just a little bit about who they are and their disability. So it's
Yep.
So it's like submitting a resume.
Yep. Very straightforward. Straightforward. It's not cumbersome at all, Leah.
Yeah, I would think a month would be adequate, and it could result in a student having income over the summer as well, research income.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Doncho.
I think Ms. Kazan makes a really good point. I'm just wondering how quickly, maybe the clerk can answer, how quickly does funding, we get all these applications, we review them, we select somebody, how quickly would that funding get to them? Like, would it be, if the deadline's in a month, would they be getting it in 2 months, 6 weeks? Or like how quickly, is it reasonable to think if we make it only a month deadline for this, that we could actually get a student the research funds in the summer? Or are we looking at months to go by before that the money will be flowed? Just wondering logistics.
To respond to that question, we get the money out as soon as possible. It's usually distributed in 2 installments. There's a first installment at the beginning and then a second installment, normally, usually roughly when we receive the report at the end, but it is funded pretty quickly.
Okay, so 5 weeks from today would take us to June the 15th. 6 weeks would take us to the 22nd. Can we stay then the 15th? So it's more than the 4 weeks suggested, but a little less than the 6 that we had talked about, in the hopes that we can get some funds rolling before we rise. We agree on June the 15th? All right. So do we have then consensus that we will issue a press release to call for applications with an award set at $5,500 and a deadline for submitting an application at June the 15th? That we have consensus on that?
How much, Chair, how much money's in the account?
Madam Clerk?
I can actually confirm that this afternoon and send an email if you please. I don't have it off the top of my hands right now, but I can probably check that for you and get back.
Okay.
And the rationale, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Long. Yeah.
I believe, I think I'm correct in saying that we topped it up a couple years back because there was an excess of money there. So we decided, I think we upped it a bit, if I remember correctly.
I think the 5,500 is consistent with past. I think the 5,500 is consistent with past years, but perhaps you could, can you confirm that, Madam Clerk?
The past, from 2016, 2017, and 2018, it was 5,500. There was a year where it was roughly $5,700, but the last 3 times where we did submit it was 5,500.
Yeah, and I think the reason we did top it up, if I remember correctly, was because there was, there was extra money there.
Mr. Tucker, please.
Yes, Chair, I would like to know what's in the fund first before we talk about topping it up anymore, because if I understand it right, it's for money that's thrown into the collection. And over the last year and a half, it's been probably depleted because there's not the tourists that usually come through. I'm not saying to reduce it, but I don't think it's the time to increase it regardless.
Okay, can we, I think this is a legitimate concern, and we do have a little bit of committee business in terms of finalizing the budget. Is everyone comfortable to delay a decision on this until we get those answers and perhaps deal with it on Thursday? It seems to me once we have that information, we could probably proceed fairly quickly. Are we good to defer a decision on that? Okay.
Point of order, Chair.
Go ahead.
Just procedurally, do you need a budget approved for us to invite the witnesses for tomorrow, or I just want to understand that?
Nope.
Okay.
No, we'll be okay to approve it tomorrow.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Or sorry, to approve it when we next meet. Okay, so the only other thing that I wanted to raise, colleagues, is just to give you a little look ahead. We did talk about the possibility of meeting during the break week if the BIA is reported to us, and if that happens, we'll have a further discussion before anything happens. You should know that Minister Schultz and officials have indicated their availability to come before the committee on May the 25th on the senior study. And Romy Bowers is available to come before the committee on May the 27th in connection with the order and council appointment. Is there any further business to come before the meeting? Is it the will of the committee to adjourn? Thank you, colleagues. We'll see you Thursday.